it started as a pilot of the bachelor program there. Marie van Leeuwen had asked me already several times if I would like to do a pilot project, and this seemed to be a moment that for me was relevant because of the decision of the municipality of Arnhem to demolish the Burgervredestraat, and I thought it would be a good idea to do research on that. So I made a text and students applied, and we formed a group. We called it our test team, and we started doing research. And the idea was that we would start the research at that moment, and we would stop the research at the moment the decision would have been made by the municipality either to demolish the work or to maintain the work. So that was that turned out to be 2 years. So finally we did a 2-year research, and yeah, that's basically it.
Yes, I would like to go to one of the students or alumni that participated, because you said like it was like a project for educational purposes. So actually, I would like to start with a question about like what was the educational outcome? Like, what did the students gain from the project? Like, what was the most inspiring part of being part of this project? Maybe Jack or Bram?
Jack was a student.
Oh yeah, you were alumni.
So I was an actual student when we started here, and I was very interested in film. I didn't know it back then yet. But once I actually started getting interested in film, I already had a whole film under my belt, which was very nice. And that's the biggest educational bit I got from doing this project.
And could I elaborate a little bit more, because this is like the actual maybe educational value for you, but to turn the question around, like could you see that there's like the value of learning? Was there also something that the educational project brought back, like the value that it brought into the project? Like what was the value of it being an educational project that it actually maybe made it so successful?
Yeah, so I think, and you might have spotted it throughout the film, when you're a student, people, I guess the cynical thing would be underestimate you, and the more positive would be give you the benefit of the doubt. So when we started interviewing people, they were very open and honest about everything until they realized that we were actually filming it. And that's, I think that's the strength of being a student. You can get away with a lot more than once you're a graduate, and people will humor you a lot more. So, you know, while you're a student, if you do something either as a educational thing or under the guise of it, you can probably open doors that would otherwise very much stay closed.
And is there maybe, because I think there are a lot of students also here present, is that right? Maybe this is also an opportunity for you maybe to ask this question about what would be maybe for you the value for education, or maybe is one of you willing to ask a question about this, well, in this manner, like on the educational value of the project? Well, maybe we'll, yeah.
Should we ask a question or should we answer the question?
Yeah, both. Perfectly all right.
Think first, answer later.
Well, one of the two. Doesn't matter.
I don't know if I understood, because you asked also for a certain topic of the question, which is about its educational value. So I don't know if this fits in there specifically, but I cannot really imagine right now the way the school is structured now of having a 2 years long project that just goes on because the research keeps going on. So I'm wondering more about that, how it's did it feel to have this ongoing project in 4 years of study? Was 2 years, that's a long time, to be stuck on this topic for so long? That's my question.
Yeah, back when I was a student, it was structured probably the same as now. So the project did stop after like the 2 months, and we had a trailer, and then there was a bit of a break of a couple of months, and then there was like outside of school you could continue. Most decided not to, and me and Koen, we went, yeah, we'd like to continue. So from that point on, it was like outside of school, extracurricular, and didn't really have that much to do with the actual structure of the study anymore. So.
Yeah, in the beginning we said that we would start and end at the moment that the decision was made. We wouldn't know how long that would take. But after the, let's say, the official bear pilot, which took a few weeks or months, everybody was asked if you want to continue or not. And some people did, some people didn't. And some people, other people joined the group. So that's the way we continued until, and then at least at the end it lasted 2 years. But I think, in general, I have a life as an artist. I can work with several projects at the same time. It's not that one project is occupying you, because you saw in the film there are a lot of meetings, and so we kept on the agenda, and sometimes there were periods in which there were no meetings or there was no reason to go somewhere to film. So we kept an eye on what happened. We knew the agenda of different parties that were involved. So when things happened, we got an action. So that doesn't mean you're busy with this all day.
If I could say some things about the educational value, of course I was not a participant in the project. I was not here at that time. But what I find striking in terms of educational value, or the things that you can learn, is working with how an artwork is being dealt with and seen outside in society, in the real world. So the legacy of an artwork, these are things that are not part of or not usually part of the training of an artist. We don't train artists to think about what's going to happen to your work in 50 years' time and in 100 years' time. We think about how can you promote your work, how can you make your work, how can you develop yourself as an artist, how can you build a sustainable practice. But what about when things start what are these things going to mean as time goes on? And I still consider myself a very young artist. I'm sure Hans considers himself a very young artist. And as time goes on, you also build up a backlog of things that are there, and to be able to understand how these things are seen not just by you, but how these things become public, and how other people can take an ownership in that and can become part of deciding what that might mean. I think these are very valuable lessons that would never have been part of the curriculum, and are not, as far as I'm aware, part of any other curriculum, had it not been for this project. But I think Lessa had a point.
I have a question.
You have a question?
Couldn't hear you.
I was wondering if the way you were looking at this artwork changed the way you were looking at your own work and work of students around you.
I think it was for you. I think
This part, the way that it has made you change.
how you look at your own work.
Well, what can I say about this? What I thought could be valuable, also for me valuable, was the fact that we could do research on something a lot of people know, but was never exposed that clear, which is how politics work in this kind of situation, how agendas work, who pulls the strings, what is the relationship in between powerful people and people with no power, what is the role of the institutions. So in that sense, there's sort of documentary which you can learn from. I think I learned also from it. But another thing is the fact that you see a young generation of artists trying to find their way in this kind of snake pit. You know, some years ago, in every academy there was this opportunity to study art in public space. That was a sort of profession. But since 2013, most of the institutions that provided these kind of art practices disappeared. And hardly any artist, young artist now, is aware of the fact that they can mean something within the construction and the building and the life of a city. You know, there is this power from artists that is necessary to make a city, but the structure for that is gone, and also the idea that that lives with artists that they can is disappearing. So when we started this project, the only precondition I had was that the artists would also film themselves. You know, not only do a research on a topic, but also film themselves doing that research in order to show a young generation finding its way. And for me, this film is, in that sense, even more important. It shows the possibility of young artists with no power, but together they gained a lot of power. In fact, they made it happen that this work still exists. In the same time, the big institutions that are responsible for taking care of cultural heritage failed in doing that. So these young artists were able to do so, and that this big institution couldn't. And I think that's a very good example of what possibilities are for artists as they start their career.
I'd like to elaborate a bit on that, because the movie is about an artwork, but the movie itself is also an artwork, and it's constructed outside the safe space of the studio or the artistic institutions. And what I find what really changed my my perspective for my practice, though I was working in context before, was that we were dealing with so different realities that were like dominated by political device and battle, and the snake pit Hans describes is very much one of competition and looks kind of hostile, and it's not a place where you think art can have a space. But just by doing research, just by asking questions, we sort of gained an agency in this whole process, because if you ask a question, somebody has to reply. And if somebody has to reply, somebody has to think. And if somebody replies, he says something, so other people hear it too. And you start this whole process of interactions between all kinds of interactions you do not oversee, which in the end lead to the creation of a movie. And what I find so beautiful about it is that we, although you have like the snake pit and it looks hostile, there still is a way for artistic energy to evaporate through all of that, even through the people who you think they are your enemies or are not interested in art. They are part of this whole process, the production that you're actually doing. And I think that's also something the movie shows as a sort of, you can, by watching the movie, you sort of like can also trace back how it started and how it came to its whole being.
Could I pass the microphone to Niels?
I can do it too.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I think the subject of agency, advocacy is really crucial here. Are you talking on behalf of the artwork? Well, Hans mentioned that the RCE and the Rijksvastgoedbedrijf should actually work on behalf of these works. the idea is also who can represent the work and who can represent this corpus mechanicus and who can represent this corpus spiritus. I really thought that this question to the element, why are you always talking in we against the artist as a singular person, whereas actually you have shown in this film, by making the film, that this is much broader, to claim to have this agency and even have, representing the arts somehow, which I think is really beautiful, taking on as a next generation. When you talk about heritage, that's exactly the thing. It surpasses the interests of the moment of a person, but you want to hand it over to the future. But what I thought was really striking in that sense is that sometimes when you talk about agency or activism, it feels that you have to have a very strong point, and it's clear who your enemies and your friends are. But the film shows that it could be completely the opposite, because even at Artes, but also some of the politicians, they did a fine share of meestribbelen. I don't know what to find a good translation. We should have that actually. So in a very soft tone, they were trying to manipulate it in the direction of the Green Corridor that was really at the agenda, and then of course the blue waves are in the way. And so actually the execution of power was actually in the soft movement all the time. I think that's something you don't experience when you just talk about art and agency or art and activism. And I think that was really a value of the project, to see that it's actually working like that.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's an answer.
Maybe I can add some.
Yeah, sure, but could I also maybe add something to this? I wasn't forget my line of thought, but was there, because I'm really interested in, like, what was the point when you doing the project, when you're in the project, when you're in it, what was the time that you actually realized that you were influencing? And the moment you realized you were influencing, did that actually change the way you were conducting the rest of the research or doing the edit? Or because the editing is quite suggestive, to say the least, and also the camera angle sometimes. So when did this happen? Like, did you have like a moment that you felt like, oh, we're actually getting somewhere, and did it change something?
Yeah, actually, these were a few moments. The most crucial moment was the moment that Artes distanced itself from the Artes team. You know, they said, okay, you saw that in the film, they said, we for research, but we don't want to be involved in a democratic decision making. So they said, okay, and these are our students, but we have nothing to do with them. Which meant they were for the process that the municipality initiated to make a quick decision. Second, the role of the Artes Academy and the role of the municipality museum here was based on only visual information. You know, there were only pictures of a nice corridor, and there were political interests, but there had not been any research. But the academy and the museum, they both said, we are in favor of doing research in order to legitimize the demolition of the work. So basically, they played a very dubious role in this thing. So at the moment we found out that the role of the Artes Academy and the role of the museum was to support the municipality in order to get a quick demolition of the work, I at least became very sharp, and I really thought this is the thing we need to focus on.
Can I say something? I think, and it's also visible in the movie at one point, it was in several meetings, but the whole process started as a research, and this research was mainly done by asking silly questions, like why or how, what do you think, blah, blah, blah. And at one moment, this amount of questions became so much that people started to question the other way around, like, who are you? What are you doing? Who is this group? And what are you researching? And I think, I don't want to brag about it, but if people then ask a silly question to you as well, and you give an intelligent answer, you suddenly have agency as an artist in a political process, in decisions that are being made. And I think that there were quite some moments in which this happened among different groups. And I think one thing that we very heavily influenced is the way people started to rethink artist impressions, because they realized, hey, they're just like images being made up. And something you learn as an artist very quickly on the academy is that all images are lies. They're constructed, so they don't represent reality, they represent a view on reality. And I think like this realization also comes forward in like people asking about the rhododendrons and whatever. But I think this was a very clear lesson that we taught politicians.
Yeah, I was looking at the time because
Actually, we're quite nearing the end of the time we have. I don't know if this is like a satisfying endpoint, but I would like to leave the endpoint open to the audience. So I would like to give you the opportunity to ask a question that maybe is still in your head or maybe totally beside the topic of the conversation, doesn't matter. But if you have a question, then please.
Could I? You are from the board of the Academy. Would you give a reflection on the film?
Yes, I will try. I must say I entered the room when it was halfway, because I didn't see all of it. I actually didn't see it when the board report responded, so I didn't see probably my colleague, which is Marjolein, I assumed that she was there. So that's my, let's say, the precondition from which I speak. What I like very much, I like the questions that were asked, because I think research has, and I think what you clearly explained, research has shown to do things that otherwise would not have been done. So I think that's very nice, that's what you want. I was actually thinking, would it not have been nice to have a film about the project of Edward in Dordrecht, where also these kind of projects, so these happen not only here in Arnhem, but in different places. I think that was interesting, I would say. The second one is, from my perspective, and unfortunately I didn't see the film, so I cannot see it, but I wondered, so there is a distinction between doing the research and influencing the project, at least in my process, in my view. And I think the opportunity of doing research, the fact that we do research without always, let's say, having the intention to influence, gives also the opportunity to have that position in which you can ask questions because you are doing research, be it educational research. So I think that also gives an opportunity that we should value there. So yes, we are the ones doing research, and we question and we ask a lot of, I don't think only silly questions, but probing questions. Say, why are you doing this? For me also the last part that I saw was very interesting. So, and what you said also I noticed, yeah, of course, artist images can provide an image that guide people's idea, and then something completely different is there. So that's another one. For me also, being sometimes part of this process, and I must say that I am more active in Enschede and Zwolle in these political processes than here in Arnhem, that is what Marjolein does. But to see how difficult and how much, how you say that, onderhandelen and little backsides things that are happening there, what a difficult processes we have in which sometimes some values are just left aside. So that's also what it demonstrated to me, and said, oh, it's good that there is a movie that also demonstrates this, not, I would think, not only to art students, but also to a larger group of people, that this is how it is, one specific area. I find it hard to reflect on the role artists play in this, because I didn't see the first part of the movie, and so that's why I find it hard. I do know that we very often struggle with the fact that on one side we think it's important that students and our researchers do these kind of research, go out there, to be in context, that's one of the things that we find important. But then they come with certain, they ask us to take a position, which we find very hard to do, because taking position means that we also lose, we were not, let's say, a political party, we're not an NGO, etc. All that. That's why we try to refrain from that. And I know that struggle might actually be even worth another movie. To come, I might always say, to come in our boardroom and when these things go on, because these are difficult questions. When do you do it? When do you don't? When do you try to influence it? Where do you stay out of it because it's not our role? So I think this only demonstrates for me also what it's not an easy field to operate in and to take right decisions.
Thanks, Hans, for bringing this up, because actually this is like the point of the whole movie, I think. Like this discussion, this debate, or the problems that arise here is like what it's all about. I promised you to have like the last word, because the project has been disseminated on many places. It has been shown, it has been debated, but still it's going on. And you wanted to say something about how it's pursuing its course. So please.
Yeah, because it's always also a request to the academy again for perhaps starting a new project. I mean, and perhaps some students want to get involved, like it was happening in the first place. I try to describe it quickly. The two major institutions in the Netherlands, which are the RCA, the Rijksdienst for Cultural Heritage, and the Rijksbouwmeester, are the two most influential and powerful organizations that have to take care of public heritage. As you could have seen in the film, they are not able to. They can only give advice, and in controversial situations like this, municipalities don't like to take their advice. So they said, yeah, we'd like to maintain the work of Peter Stuyver, but we have no tools to do that. As you could also have seen, the students wrote a letter to the municipality saying, hey, can you wait with your final decision until our research has been done? And that was accepted in a political motion. They managed what these two big institutions could not manage. So what we did, we went to these institutions, to the boards of these institutions, and said, hey, something lacks in your organization. If you don't have the tools to have a major say in what is going on with cultural heritage, maybe you should gain or get tools to do that. And in analogy, or what you see in a situation with nature, in which now more and more activities are there to have nature get a legal position. So it's not people dealing with nature, but nature itself gets a legal personality rights. We set up a debate, which is in the autumn going to be a symposium in a municipality in Arnhem here, supported by the municipality, about the possibility of giving public heritage citizenship. And this would be, let's say, a qualification with legal consequences, but also with giving us all a tool to value things that are valuable. Because what you could see is there are tons of agendas, but no general agreement on what is valuable or not. And I think in terms of nature, but also in this case, in terms of public heritage, it would be very, very important to instrument ourselves with a new tool of value, which is called citizenship. And the big institutions agreed with it. They are open for the discussion. They even like to instrumentalize this kind of thing. But this will not be easy. This will become us again, perhaps 2 years of struggling and finding out and going to lawyers and all kinds of legal consequences and so on. And I thought it would be very nice to gather a team again from a young artist to register that, to ask questions again, to see what's going on and how these institutions react on it, how other institutions react on it, how politics reacts on that. And perhaps that will lead to another film, this time about the citizenship of cultural heritage.